In the basement of the University Medical Center at 3:14 in the morning, there is a sound that does not belong to any living body. It is a wet mechanical click, followed by a soft, rhythmic hiss. Under the stark glare of a single overhead halogen bulb, a clear acrylic dome sits on a stainless steel counter. Inside the dome, suspended in a bath of cold, oxygenated saline, is a human heart. It is pale pink, drained of its blood, and weighs exactly 312 grams. It belongs to no one. The patient it came from was declared brain dead 6 hours ago in a hospital 3 states away. The patient who will receive it is still asleep in an intensive care unit upstairs. Right now, in this middle space, the heart is completely alone. Yet, it is beating. It contracts and expands with a stubborn, terrifying regularity, 60 times a minute, driven by nothing but its own internal circuitry. It does not know its owner is gone. It does not know it is sitting in a basement in Utah. It simply continues its work. Dr. Sharon Vance, a clinical researcher in cardiopulmonary preservation, stands by the counter with a black ink pen in her hand, recording the flow rate of the perfusion machine. The machine hums at 42 decibels, a constant low-frequency vibration that rattles the specimen cups on the metal shelf behind her. Vance has spent 12 years watching these organs exist in the margins between lives, and she has noticed a quiet truth that most medical textbooks gloss over. We are raised to believe that our heart is the emotional core of our being, the seat of our soul, the drum to which our identity marches. But when you hold one in your hands, cold and wet, you realize it is something else entirely. It is an occupant. It is a highly specialized, ancient biological machine that lives inside us, keeping us warm, but remaining utterly indifferent to who we are, what we think, or what we love. To understand this, we have to go back to a quiet, dark space in the winter of 1993, before you had a name, a voice, or a single memory. On the 22nd day of your gestation, when your entire physical existence was nothing but a tiny, curved shield of cells, no larger than a grain of sand, something extraordinary happened. There was no brain yet. There were no eyes to see, no ears to hear, and no nerves to feel. The blueprint of your nervous system was still just a flat plate of tissue, silent and inert. But in a small clump of cells derived from the mesoderm, a microscopic spark occurred. A single cell membrane leaked a tiny amount of sodium, shifted its electrical charge, and contracted. It pulled its neighboring cells with it. Within hours, this tiny tube of tissue began to pulse in a synchronized, rhythmic twitch. It was the first heartbeat. It did not start because a brain told it to. It started because it is the nature of cardiac cells to beat. They are self-exciting, programmed at the deepest molecular level to march to a rhythm they create themselves. The heart is the architect of the body, building the vascular highways and pumping the warm mortar that allows the brain to grow, the limbs to stretch, and the skin to form. It built the house you live in, and it did so before you were there to occupy it. For the rest of your life, this engine runs in the dark, performing a physical feat that defies our common understanding of machinery. By the time you reach your 30th birthday, your heart will have beaten more than 1 billion times. It does not rest. It does not take a holiday. If your bicep or your quadricep were forced to contract without intermission for even an hour, the buildup of lactic acid would cause excruciating pain and complete muscle failure. But the heart is made of a unique fabric called cardiac muscle, packed with mitochondria that convert oxygen into energy so efficiently that it never fatigues. It works at a level of constant, quiet violence, pumping 7,500 liters of blood through 96,000 kilometers of blood vessels every single day. If you were to live to be 80, this small 300-gram muscular fist will have exerted enough physical force to lift a mid-sized locomotive clean off the tracks. And yet, you do not feel it. You walk through the grocery store, you write emails, you argue with your spouse, and you never once acknowledge the heavy, wet thudding occurring behind your ribs. We treat it like background noise, a utility bill paid by an anonymous benefactor. But the true strangeness of this arrangement lies deeper than mere endurance. In the late 1980s, neurocardiologists made a discovery that quietly upended our understanding of where the self begins and ends. They found that the heart is not just a muscular pump controlled by the brain. It possesses its own highly complex nervous system, known formally as the intracardiac nervous system. This is a dense network of roughly 40,000 sensory neurons, glia, and support cells wrapped directly around the chambers of the heart. It is, in every functional sense, a tiny, independent brain. This cardiac brain can sense changes in pressure, monitor chemical levels in the blood, and make local, real-time decisions about how to adjust the heart's behavior without consulting the brain in your head. It has its own short-term memory. It can learn from its own experiences. If you completely sever the connection between a human brain and a human heart, the heart does not stop. It does not even hesitate. It continues to monitor its environment, adjust its output, and maintain its life-giving rhythm using its own private neural library. It is a sovereign state operating within your borders. This brings us to the surgical theater where the boundary between the self and the stranger is laid bare. During an orthotopic heart transplant, a surgeon must perform an act of profound structural violence. They open the recipient's chest, connect them to a heart-lung bypass machine, and then take a scalpel to the major vessels. They cut the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, the pulmonary artery, and the aorta. But most importantly, they cut the vagus nerve and the sympathetic nerve fibers. These are the thick biological cables that connect the brain's emotional center directly to the heart. This is the pathway that makes your chest tighten when you are afraid, that makes your heart flutter when you see someone you love, and that slows your pulse down when you exhale deeply in a dark room. Once these nerves are cut, the connection is gone forever. The surgical team lifts the old, failing heart out of the chest, leaving a hollow, quiet cavern of blood and bone. They then take the donor heart out of its cold preservation saline, place it into the empty space, and sew the blood vessels back together. They release the clamps, allowing the warm red blood of the recipient to flood into the cold muscle of the stranger. When that warm blood hits the donor heart, the muscle twitches, shudders, and begins to beat. The transplant is a success. The patient will live, but they will live under a different set of laws. In the years following a heart transplant, something remarkable happens. Those severed nerves do not grow back. The connection between the recipient's brain and their new heart is permanently lost. This is a medical condition known as denervation. The implications of a denervated heart are quiet, subtle, and deeply surreal. If a transplant recipient walks down a dark alley at night, and a shadow suddenly jumps out from behind a dumpster, their brain will instantly recognize the threat. The brain will fire signals of panic, releasing adrenaline into the bloodstream. But because the direct neural connection is gone, the heart does not instantly leap into a frantic sprint. It remains cool, flat, and steady. It only speeds up minutes later, slowly, as the circulating adrenaline eventually drifts through the bloodstream to reach the cardiac tissue. The rapid, visceral terror that we associate with fear, the immediate pounding in the chest that tells us we are alive and in danger, is gone. The patient's mind can be screaming in terror, but the engine in their chest is running at a calm, indifferent cruise. Furthermore, a denervated heart does not respect the quiet cycles of its host's daily life. In a healthy human, the brain tells the heart to slow down during sleep, dropping the heart rate to 50 or 60 beats per minute to let the body heal. But the transplanted heart cannot hear these instructions. Left to its own devices, without the dampening signal of the vagus nerve, the stranger beats at its own natural intrinsic resting rate of about 90 to 100 beats per minute, 24 hours a day, whether the patient is running a marathon or fast asleep in bed. It is a permanent, tireless worker that does not care if you are tired, does not care if you are sad, and does not adjust its tempo to match your mood. It operates on a cold, structural logic of its own. The person living with a transplanted heart is forced to realize, in a way the rest of us can easily ignore, that their life is being sustained by an entity that is completely deaf to their thoughts. We spend our lives trapped inside the narrative of our own minds. We identify so deeply with our worries, our ambitions, our regrets, and our identities. We think of ourselves as the driver of the vehicle, steering our lives through the decisions we make and the thoughts we think. But the reality is that the driver is merely a tenant in a house, kept warm by a silent, ancient landlord who lives in the basement. Your brain can spend the night spinning in endless, exhausting loops of anxiety about money, aging, or social status. It can construct elaborate scenarios of ruin and despair, burning valuable energy on phantom threats. And all the while, 3 inches below that spinning mind, the stranger in your chest quietly, methodically, and without a single word of appreciation, continues to lift the heavy weight of your physical existence. It does not care about your worries. It does not know about your bills. It simply keeps the blood moving. 60 seconds a minute, 60 minutes an hour, 3,600 times a day, so that you have the luxury of lying awake and worrying about things that do not exist. Dr. Vance finishes her notations, snaps her pen shut, and turns off the halogen lamp over the acrylic dome. The room falls into a soft, cool darkness, lit only by the green digital display of the perfusion monitor. In the dim light, the pale pink heart continues its lonely, rhythmic dance, contracting and releasing in its bath of cold salt. It is an image of pure, unadorned survival. We are not a single, unified self. We are a fragile, temporary alliance of quiet entities that have agreed to work together for a short time in the dark. The part of you that is currently listening to these words, the part of you that thinks of itself as I, is just the passenger. The engine that keeps you here is someone else entirely. It is a stranger you have never met, working in a room you will never see, keeping you alive simply because that is the only thing it knows how to do. And when its work is finally done, it will not ask for your permission, and it will not wait for your goodbye. It will simply stop,